to build some interactivity into this page, what we want to do is we need to first, we need to identify the major players here in this page. And so I'm going to add some script here that just says, we're going to create a couple of collections here. And the first collection is called draggable items. It's all of the things that have the query or the CSS selector draggable item. And you can see here I'm doing the same thing with the target divs, and I'm calling those target divs. Okay, so now I've just identified those things. It allows me to do things to the whole group or identify things in that group or members in that group with a lot of ease. So the first thing I want to do is I want to add event listeners to each of the draggable items. And so what I want to do with that is I want to start with draggable items for each, and we'll call that item. I don't need those extra parentheses, item. And then we're going to use an arrow function here, which is just a shortcut way of doing something to each item in draggable items. And so what we're going to do to each one is add an event listener to each one, event listener, and we're going to call it Dragstart. Okay, so when we start dragging that item, and then we'll use an anonymous function here and pass it the event so we can access that. And then what we want to do is we're going to first, when we start dragging that, we need to store the name of the toy. And we're going to get the name of the toy right here from the inner text. So what we're going to do there is event data transfer set data. So we're setting some data in the event data transfer component itself, and the text, the data is going to be in plain text, plain, not pain. There we go. And then event dot target there we go, inner text. And so all that's saying is when we start dragging this, we're going to take this inner text and we're going to stuff it into the event.dataTransfer data container. There's a temporary data container that we can utilize for things like this. And so we're going to set that data. We're also going to event data transfer set data, and we're going to say ID, and we're going to change that to event target ID. Okay, so there is that. We're going to store the item ID so we can remove it later. And then the final thing is we're going to give a little feedback to the console so that we know this is working and we can sort of track what's going on. So we'll say console.log and started dragging. And then we're going to say, let's use a template literal here. Started dragging. And then we want to say event target dot inner text. There we go. Now we can say, what was it that we started dragging? Let's make sure we're being cautious with our semicolon usage. Make sure we're closing out each line explicitly. And now we have that section. Let's test it out and see what happens. So we'll run back to our page here. And now you can see when I start dragging things, it's actually telling me over here in the console what I started dragging. So now we're actually picking up these draggable elements and responding to the drag event. So that's a positive thing. That's really nice. We're detecting the dragging event, and that's the first step.